If you spend any time in or around the Atlanta area, you've heard tales of Lake Lanier. There are area accounts of fishermen seeing ghostly kayaks floating on the water, or women with no hands roaming the Jerry D. Jackson Bridge. Every so often, someone loses their life at the lake and leaves behind stories of good swimmers being snatched under the water, unexplainable boating accidents, or vehicles crashing into the lake without cause. As beautiful as the lake is, it's shrouded in mystery. One mystery that most people don't know of is that there is a town located at the bottom of the lake, the town of Oscarville. In the early 1900s, the town of Oscarville was a flourishing African American community with businesses, families, churches. On one dreadful day in September of 1912, that all changed. Here are the events surrounding that day. Please like, share, and subscribe to Where in the World is Frank and Gina on YouTube. Oscarville, Georgia is located in the northern end of Forsyth County in Georgia. If you look at it today, the town is predominantly white. However, back in 1912, it was starkly different. The African American community in 1912 was flourishing. However, events of September of 1912 caused 1,100 people to be displaced, and even worse, a massacre that would to this day still stand as one of the worst stains in Georgia history. Here's the story of the events of that day. On September 12, 1912, an 18-year-old white woman named Sleety Mae Crow was raped and beaten in the Big Creek community of Forsyth County, Georgia. She would later succumb to her injuries. The first to be accused was Rob Edwards, whose only crime was being in the area at the time of the murder. The next to be accused was Ernest Knox and Oscar Daniel. The two boys were tried and convicted of murder within a week and hanged by an angry mob of 8,000, even though it was illegal in the state at that time. And if things couldn't get any worse, Ellen Grice earlier that week had accused two other black men, Tony Howell and Isaiah Perkle, of rape. They were jailed, and a local preacher, Grant Ellen, who had speculated that she had had consensual sex with these two men, was later strung up by horses and nearly beat to death, until the local sheriff at the time intervened and was able to save him, dragging him off into the courthouse steps. Regardless of whether these men were guilty, they were never tried by a court of law. These events enraged some of the white residents, which began to organize posses with guns and dynamite. The enraged mob were in support of the murdered girl's parents, who stated that they wanted the fiends of hell to all be rid of coming Georgia, meaning the black people, sparking off the Night Riders or the Ku Klux Klan, who would ride through the night terrorizing black residents. Since it had only been 50 years earlier that the Civil War had ended, some Southern residents jumped at the idea when it came time to cleanse their neighborhood. As the terror continued, it took a few months for the so-called Night Riders to run the black residents out of their neighborhoods. Those who refused were killed. However, there were some that still refused and even managed to kill their attackers. Does the story end here? Unfortunately, it doesn't. After most of the residents were ran out of Oscarville, the remaining residents were forced to sell their land over to the government, thus creating the beginning of Lake Sidney Lanier. Today, the lake is a reservoir in the northern part of the U.S. state of Georgia. It was created by the completion of Beaufort Dam on the Chattahoochee River in 1956. It is also fed by the waters of the Chistaste River. I'd like to end this with a quote from George Santayana. The quote goes, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." So, are the multiple disappearances, boating accidents, drownings, and other mishaps that happen at the lake, do they have anything to do with the town of Oscarville? You be the judge. In closing, the terrible events that happened in the early 1900s in Oscarville, Georgia, is not something that should ever be forgotten. However, we must move forward as people and try to get along and love one another. Rest in peace to the victims of Oscarville, Georgia. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe to Video Fit Solutions and Where in the World is Frank and Gina on YouTube.